Why does my hat constantly look crooked? What am I going the wrong way with it? There. No? I'm having a hard time.
That's okay. All right. So for this week's scene again, we decided to revisit Mystery Men, which came out in 1999, and you used to watch this a lot.
I did.
I did not
I've told
remember
the story.
anything.
I've told the story of my babysitter who was a big filmophile,
Yeah.
and she would constantly buy movies or watch movies or rent movies, and she always either had an eye for really good, or she had an eye for entertainingly bad, and then it's something that she really liked that I'm only starting to understand now as an adult is schlock, like bad but still fun.
Oh, of course, I know a lot about
Well,
that.
I mean, like, the entertainingly bad, I'm not talking about, like, trash movies like Plan 9 or, like, The Room. I mean, like, it's not a great movie, but you can kind of have fun with it if you don't pull at any threads.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where this movie came in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we gotta put up the pictures.
Now that we're doing the segment, yeah.
So
Bloop.
Mystery Men was directed by Kinka Usher. This guy was formerly a commercial director, like an award-winning commercial director. Let's see, I thought I had taken a note of all the commercials he did, but perhaps I didn't.
This ended up being his only large...
Yeah, so this was his first time transitioning to directing a feature film, and his only time. He went back to directing commercials after this because he didn't really like the process.
Originally, it was supposed to be directed by...
Danny DeVito.
Legendary Danny DeVito. And if you know the story of Danny DeVito, one of the coolest things I've ever listened to is Mark Maron's episode of his WTF podcast with Danny DeVito, where he tells his entire life story, grew up in New Jersey, and like everything he went through as a kid to get to the place where he's at now, and his marriage, which actually is one of the coolest marriages in Hollywood history. And he's an excellent producer and director. He thinks very deeply about the things he does, which it's weird that this is 2 movies in a row we've done that have Danny DeVito connected to him.
Yeah, Mystery Men was adapted from the Flaming Carrot comics, which were made by Bob Burden. The Mystery Men were introduced in comic number 16. They were part of a flashback, like, dream sequence, and then there kind of was, like, a little spin-off for a short time. But Kinka Usher actually came from the School of Corman.
Oh! If you watched our charity stream, our charity event we did for the Bay City Masonic Theater, we talked quite extensively about the School of Corman.
His breakthrough was being hired as a camera assistant on one of Roger Corman's movies. It might have been The Nest from the late 80s, but...
that movie's gross.
I don't remember that one either. But, yeah, so Danny DeVito was originally slated to direct and write the movie, but then I guess negotiations over the soundtrack fell through because Danny DeVito wanted to be in charge of, like, who produced the soundtrack and how the soundtrack sounded, I guess. Like, and it meant so much to him that when it fell through, he just walked away from the project. And then Ben Stiller was offered a chance to write and direct it, but he thought it would be too big of a task, like it was too big of a movie.
Which is funny, because if you see the things he went on to do, like, especially things like the Zoolander franchise and things like that, those are big projects that he pulled off excellently.
But yeah, the idea of a Mystery Men movie first started in 1997. This was when talk of, like, other comic book adaptations were coming to fruition, like Blade, X-Men, the Hulk, Fantastic Four. But yeah, so Danny DeVito walked away. Ben Stiller didn't want to write or direct it. So Kinka Usher was offered the chance, but he was discouraged when he first saw the script because he loved the premise of it, but he thought it was really boring. And so I would say I have to agree. This was my first time seeing this movie, I think, fully. Like, when it first came out, I think I tried watching it and I just wasn't into it, so I never finished it. And I thought, with time, maybe I'll appreciate it more now, but I'm gonna be honest, I did not really care for this movie. Something about it just didn't sit right. Like, it didn't work. I can't quite place what it is.
Some of the dialogue is a little, metacratic, where it seems like characters are just talking about things that could be shown to us when they could have just shown it.
Yeah, the cast of this, first of all, is fantastic, which is why it's a bummer that I didn't like this more, but...
No, I'm glad you say that. So let's do the cast.
Okay.
Because it's insane. Mm-hmm. This cast, especially for 1999, is out of this world.
Yeah.
You have Greg Kinnear, William H. Macy, Paul Rubens. You have Kel Thompson. What's his last name?
I didn't write it down. You're thinking of Kenan, I think. Kenan Thompson.
Right. The other half of Kenan and Kel. Janine Garofalo. Who else? Ben Stiller.
I believe this was Jeffrey Rush's first big Hollywood movie.
And he steals this movie, if you ask me. He's probably one of the best parts of this movie, is Jeffrey Rush. And when you see what he's working opposite, it's kind of crazy. Eddie Izzard.
Praz was the other main disco group.
Yep.
See, this movie had so much potential because there are a lot of funny bits, like the disco villains. Jeffrey Rush was a really good villain. I felt like he didn't have enough screen time.
Well, he's so big in this movie, you want to see him.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
In scenes where he's not in it, you're like, I want to see more of him.
Tom Waits has
is like a mad scientist.
Good role in this.
Yeah.
And at this point, his voice wasn't that gravelly yet.
We're not getting
he
Tom
still
Waits
looked
yet.
quite young in this.
He's jumping around. He's having fun. He's throwing stuff. It's not the Tom Waits that we all think of now.
But yeah, so you have this great cast, and then
Danny legendary Native American actor Danny Pudi.
Yeah.
I always support your indigenous actors and actresses, and Danny Pudi in this one he gives some lines and his whole shtick in this movie is completely deadpan, but when you listen to him every time he talks, it gets a little bit funnier. It's one of those like repetition things. It's just too bad that like that didn't carry into other places.
The film looks good. It's very stylish. You can tell like it was directed by someone who has directed commercials because some of the camera work was really flashy. Like there's a lot of tilted angles, a lot of quick cuts and edits, but
there's some cool lighting stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I just found myself kind of bored at times and like checking out of it. It didn't feel balanced. It just seemed like no one in this seemed to know what they wanted or what they were going for.
If there's two issues that you pointed out that I completely understand right after we watched it, it's pacing, because we'll get like a load of story, a big peak of story, and then it'll drop and drag for a minute, and then you get like a bunch of story, and then it'll drop and drag. And tone, because there are times where it's a pretty entertaining action movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then in those drag moments when it could be comedy, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't decide when it needs to be action and when it needs to be comedy at the right times. And I feel like that's not a directing issue as much as a script issue.
And the parts that are entertaining, I feel like it is because of the performers in this. I know Janine Garofalo signed on, and then she encouraged Ben Stiller to join. She said it was a great script when it was sent to her, but she did not like how the movie turned out. I guess on set was a big mess, and it is really sad to read about the behind-the-scenes stuff, considering all these great people. Ben Stiller and Greg Kinnear got into a really big fight on set, and Ben Stiller wanted to walk off.
Oh, we forgot about voice acting legend Hank Azaria.
Oh yeah.
If you've ever watched The Simpsons and you wonder what character Hank Azaria is, the answer is yes. Hank Azaria probably does 20 voices on The Simpsons and other animated shows.
But yeah, so Ben Stiller and Janine Garofalo were given a lot of freedom to kind of make things up. What word am I thinking of?
Improvise.
So yeah, like a lot of the more humorous parts of the movie, I feel like are because of the performers. Like even Paul Rubens said the way he felt he was acting is not what it turned out to be when he saw the actual movie. It's like what was happening on the set?
Yeah, was there an editing issue?
I don't know.
Is it an attitude? Because if you think about this character, Paul Rubens plays a superhero called the Spleen, and his superpower is that he can control the volume, velocity, and density of his own flatulence. Now, when you hear something like that, you like a Paul Rubens fan would get excited because that sounds custom suited to his kind of comedy, this zany, goofy kind of comedy that fits him perfectly. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it almost comes off mean-spirited.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess so like Janine Garofalo came out after the film was released and said like it was a nightmare to make. They were working really long hours and had no like real direction or vision of what it was gonna be, and the script was being reworked all the time by everybody, and all the comedic people couldn't find a balance of what they thought would make it funny.
Well, especially because for comedic actors you have Janine Garofalo and Ben Stiller and Paul Rubens. One of the things that they have to be able to do is see these words on a page and have time to kind of consume them so that they can figure out how that they make that moment funny. Like that you can't like, yes, there are plenty of actors who take improvisational moments or improvised situations and kind of can just spit out something and then just keep doing it until it's funny. But these particular ones are all actors and actresses who take situations and really work that you could, especially somebody like a Ben Stiller or a Janine Garofalo, and they work it in their mind and they mold it first before it comes out because they want it to be right. And so when you're reworking a script like that, they'll be looking at the script for 2 days, and then probably the day before they get a whole nother thing, and they're like, well, now I have to figure this out on the fly, and it just doesn't work like that.
It's a bummer because now, knowing more about the history, I do wonder what this could have been had Danny DeVito directed it. For instance, he directed Matilda, and I love Matilda. I love that movie. It's so whimsical, and if this movie just had a bit more of those qualities mixed with the zany qualities. I mean, I do understand, like, it's probably a darker comic as well, but
even like, that, it looks like a darker comedy. It
Yeah.
never leans into that.
Yeah.
So you could have, if it would have gone more either one way for a younger audience, not quite as young as Matilda, but you know, like preteens, or leaned into the darker elements, the more adult elements of the movie, because there are some points where their characters just dying gruesome deaths, and then there's other points where you're like, oh, that's kind of cute, and if they'd have kind of found more or leaned into one side or the other more, it may have been a better movie. Like you're saying, especially if Danny DeVito, well, you can look at it either or. If Danny DeVito would have directed it, we probably would have got a lighter movie. We probably would have got, but the comedy would have been a little more coherent, because that's one of the things about Matilda that this is missing, are those moments that nothing necessarily funny is happening, but you smile because it makes you feel good. This movie doesn't have those moments of emotion without like forcing it.
Yeah, there is, I think, okay, so the first time I saw Greg Kinnear in this, because he's Captain Amazing, I immediately thought of Homelander from The Boys.
Oh!
And I'm wondering if there was some kind of inspiration there, but that's what I immediately thought of. And there is one particular scene I didn't think they would go there, and they did. And I'm like, if they had done that, maybe a little bit more, like put more of a risk to some of the characters, because then there was a later scene with a specific character, and I thought, oh, maybe it will go there, maybe the power won't work for him, and something
okay,
will
just say
happen.
what you're referring to, because I know exactly what you're referring to. So the first instance is Captain Amazing in the chair. Yes. Where they're trying to figure out how to turn the the geothermic diffraculator. Like one of the funniest parts of the movie is Tom Waits playing this mad scientist, just saying all this pseudo-scientific gobbledygook. None of it really makes any sense, but it's funny because he's a mad scientist saying fake stuff. And so there's this big machine, and Greg Kinnear's sitting in this chair. Well, they're trying to turn it off, and some communicative wires get crossed, which here's another point where that could have been a really funny scene, and it doesn't work for some reason. If it would have been, because there's a couple other like Abbott and Costello communication moments that do work, but if that would have had that a little more, it would have been funny. And he ends up getting melted, like straight up melted. And then later on, there's a point where Kel's character, Invisible Boy, who can only be invisible when when nobody's looking at him, turns invisible and then walks in front of this laser that detects motion. Now, if it would have gone there, I feel like that was a good place to put stakes for his power to have to happen. Now, if it would have made it like a tense moment, oh no, is his power going to work in time? That would have made more sense than us just watching him believe his power is going to work into it. You know what I mean? Lead us to believe that he died, like show his clothes ashed up like the guy was, and then show him naked. You know, there was another way to do that it would have worked better.
Yeah. So yeah, the shooting for this began in October of 1998, and they didn't finish until April of 1999. So by that point, the cast was already feeling like this shoot has been way too long, and this came out from Universal, and Universal delayed the film's release by 1 week because the Blair Witch Project came out, and they wanted to avoid competing with the Blair Witch Project.
Stay tuned.
This was a box office bomb.
Well,
the budget was $68 million, and the total box office was $33.5 million.
That's a real deal kick straight to the crotch.
I feel like the biggest thing about this was probably the Smash Mouth song, and I never liked that song, so that was probably one reason I really didn't care
Smash
to
Mouth.
see
Okay.
this movie back then.
And before that, Smash Mouth had one hit that was not movie related. Was "Walking on the Sun."
That song's not bad.
That song's not bad.
Yeah.
But then you get into All Star for This, which, you know, it became like this pop culture phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that, they did what was the one they did for Shrek?
I'm a Believer.
Oh, the Monkees cover.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they did the Monkees cover. Oh, R.I.P. Monkeys. We're talking about the Monkees.
Yeah.
This week. So the Smash Mouth song ended up being this pop culture phenomenon, and I talked last week about songs that get played so much when they first come out that you don't care whether or not you hear them again for the rest of your life, and that was definitely one of those.
Yeah.
All Star got played every hour on the hour, which young people, back in the days before streaming, we didn't have a choice. The radio played whatever the radio played, and you didn't really have a say in it. So there are a few songs, especially from the 90s, especially in the one-hit wonders years of the 90s, where some songs just got played absolutely to death, and All Star was one of them. Mm-hmm. I still am not a fan of that song. The soundtrack probably per unit outsold the movie itself.
Yeah, and I don't really remember the score, but they did use like they used Planet Claire by the B-52s. They used some other cool songs, but
yeah, I was thinking that because there was a point where I looked at you and I was like, this soundtrack's actually, other than that song, is kind of right up your alley.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this was kind of a bummer. Like I think I was just expecting more from it, and
this was the first time during a scene again where I was disappointed.
Yeah, some of it was entertaining, but for the most part I was pretty bored. Now I have no idea what the original comics that this was based on are like. Bob Burden, the creator of the comics, was on the set for some of the time because they would ask him questions like, what do you think would happen in this scenario? And he actually, I don't believe Invisible Boy was from the comic. I think he kind of created it while there, and they liked how absurd it sounded, so they decided to keep him in the script. It's just, I felt like this could have been a little bit more absurd, but at times it does feel like it took itself a little too seriously, and yes. I don't know, the tone of it just seemed all over.
And this is the reason for this segment, though.
Yeah.
Is as an adult going back and seeing what works and what doesn't from movies that you're nostalgic over. And I'm not going to lie, I still watched it through nostalgic glasses.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I've thought about it since we did like our critical watch for the show, I've thought about it. I was like, man, just seeing it as kind of a bummer. I'm glad we did, because it really does show those things from that era of movies that just don't work. In the beginning of the movie, we get a lot of cool like Three Stooges stuff between Hank Azaria, Ben Stiller, and William H. Macy. Mm-hmm. There's actually one scene where the three of them are saying like we should run, we should rush them, we should bolt, or whatever it was, we'd go this way, and they're just repeating those three phrases between the three of them.
Mm-hmm.
When they do those like old style comedy, old like 50s style comedy bits in this, because there's a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Generally they work, but once the movie was trying to be edgy, it went a little too far. There are some action sequences that seem superfluous. They seem like they don't make sense. There's the one time where the mystery men catch up to the bad guy Frankenstein Casanova's Corvette limo, which, by the way, you watch this movie, you go, oh, cool, how did they get a Corvette limo? And that's one of the things that is shot well, is they shoot the front end of this Corvette and then the rest of a limo, and you never see it all at once. Mm-hmm. But it's cool. The idea of a Corvette limo is kind of cool. But they beat up the car and then run away and they're all happy, but that scene doesn't matter in the long run of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a bummer. What are we doing back here? Sorry, Dyson's having a moment. I don't know if I can get can't get him on camera. He's throwing a fit back there. Okay, he's done.
Now he's tired.
The different superpowers are kind of funny. They're kind of original.
Mm-hmm.
Like they seem like a mechanic that could have been used to better effect. William H. Macy is the shoveler, which he basically is really good with a shovel. He can use a shovel. Which even there's actually a point in the movie that's kind of funny where he says, "I shovel well. I shovel very well," and it's a funny line. Who's the lady that plays his wife?
Jennifer Lewis.
Jennifer Lewis. Yes. She is always. I mean, she's always an entertaining presence.
Mm-hmm.
That's another actress that they don't quite give her enough in this.
Yeah.
Ben Stiller is Mr. Furious, which he's supposed to get like super strength when he's mad, but really he's just a dude. Janine Garofalo is the bowler, and technically she doesn't have any powers, but she uses a magical bowling ball,
which has the skull of her dad, Carmine the bowler, in it, and he was assassinated, and so she's kind of looking for revenge.
So, right, you get the idea that her dad had a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he had, like, superhuman control over bowling balls when he used them. Who else? We talked about the spleen.
Blue Raja.
Okay, one of the funny things that I wish they would have made more of a joke is that guy's whole persona doesn't make any sense unless he explains it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that could be a funny bit, is him having to explain it.
At the beginning, too, he has a lot of fork-related puns, and they don't really keep that going through the rest of the movie.
It should have been a constant fork pun. He supernaturally throws forks well. Mm-hmm. Which I wish that was more of a... Or keeping up the joke of why don't you use knives? Mm-hmm. Because in the beginning, they have an argument of why he doesn't use knives, which... If at some point in the movie it would have come up where all that's left next to him to throw is a knife, that would have been a good, like, moment, but it doesn't happen.
There were some, kind of touching scenes, like, when he's at home and he's not speaking with the accent, and then his mom finds out who he is, and so she gives him more silverware. See... There are a lot of like setups in this that I feel like this could have worked better as like a series, but at this point you didn't really get a lot of series
like long form storytelling
like you do today. So yeah, it's almost like they couldn't figure out how the script should go or like what should be in it. I almost
guarantee you that moment with him and his mom, because this is what it makes me think of. That moment with him and his mom when she gives him, like, the silverware from his grandmother, that, I guarantee you, was part of Danny DeVito's script that stuck through. Because that is something that DeVito would put in a movie. That's one of those feel-good moments that he writes that give you those nostalgic feelings for a movie. Tom Waits plays a mad scientist named Heller who makes... ridiculous non-lethal weapons. So there's one that it's a gun that shoots superheated bubbles that make your clothes too tight. There's one that makes people argue.
There's the tornado gun.
There's a tornado in a can.
Yeah.
So it's like a grenade, but when you throw it, a tornado comes out. What else? But there's just a lot of fun stuff. He has a couple good moments. And then when we get to the end of the movie and Jeffrey Rush's villain character is kind of playing this Cyrus from the Warriors, bringing all the gangs together, there's a lot of little cameos. So you have the frat boy gang, who one of the people in the frat boy gang is just director Michael Bay.
He's the main frat boy.
Yep. We already talked about how the leader of the Disco Boys is Eddie Izzard and Praz from the Fugees.
You have the Not So Goody Mob,
which is just the Goody Mob. It's just CeeLo Green, Big Gip, like they're just it. Okay, and here's so you're gonna have the Goody Mob in your movie, right? And then you're going to make one of the bits at the end this big electromagnet. And you're telling me that you aren't making it look like grills are popping out of the Goody Mob's mouth. You got Big Gip there with a grill in his mouth you can see from half the screen away.
I think they just show like some of their necklaces and stuff, but that's
come on,
about
you got Big Gip, whose big hit record in our time was called Grills, and his grill doesn't come out of his mouth. Also, there's a couple funny cameos. Dyson. There's a couple funny cameos in the barbecue scene. You get a super young Dane Cook. Who else is in that? Because I feel like there's a couple. We didn't really take the time to eke out every one of them, but
yeah,
Big Gip.
Because that was a scene where up to that point it was like zany, but not too zany, and then that scene was like really zany.
It
and
went
I was
way
like,
over the top.
I was like, oh, like. The tone has really shifted for this scene. Like, I don't know. Things just kept taking me out of it. But I know what you're talking about. There was a woman in that scene, and I can't think of who she was.
Was it the comedian that played the PMS Avenger?
Yes, I can't remember who she was.
That's a good bit. The bit with the PMS Avenger where she only has superpowers 4 days a month.
So she can only work 4 days a month.
Do you got a problem with that? Like, that's a good bit. There's some moments, and I feel like a lot of that is let's get comedians, let them make up their own superhero, and that a superhero that makes no sense. And then that'll be our bits for the scene. Because Dane Cook as the waffler, just hitting himself in the face with a waffle iron, that's just Dane Cook. That's just Dane Cook comedy. Just waving his arms and being loud. And this is before the 2000s when his career skyrocketed. Because this is about 4 years before he was huge. 99. I don't think he had his Comedy Central special until 2004, 2005.
Yeah, and I guess Ving Rhames and Vince Vaughn were both considered for roles in this, but yeah, just
Ving Rhames and Vince Vaughn would have been a good leader of the Disco Boys duo.
That was another thing I think I said too. I was like, wow, it felt like it took forever for Janeane Garofalo to show up in this movie.
It's about a half hour, 40 minutes before Janeane Garofalo, and then she shows up, and she's the only one with any real kind of power. Which, she's the only one with any real... So there's a lot of moments where the writers kind of wrote themselves into a corner. Oh, how do we get out of this? Well, the bowler has actual powers. There's a couple moments where you're like, all right, the movie stops dead for a second. Oh, there's Janeane Garofalo. And it's sad, because I really wanted to love this movie. The end is fun. The end scene after it's all over when they walk out and nobody ever really calls them the Mystery Men. Yeah,
that was a good little bit. I guess there was a different ending, but test audiences hated it, so they wrote that more cheerful,
so what's the difference?
Upbeat ending.
What's the difference if test audiences hated it if audiences after it came out didn't really like it either?
Yeah.
Like, and that's one of the problems, and with the Weinstein era of making movies, that's one of the problems with them, is that films got made, they got sent to test audiences, and then test audiences ruined them. If this movie would have ended on a down note, people might have actually liked it more.
Yeah. Just, I don't know.
So that's our first not so great scene again.
Yep. All right. So now